From Lake Park, Minnesota, I'm Randy Conan with the Red River Farm Network. This is the Pioneer Agronomy Update. I'm visiting with field agronomist Sarah Lovas. And Sarah, you're holding flowers.
They're my kind of flowers. They're enlist soybeans. So yeah, they're beautiful. Just talking a little bit about soybean production in the area, giving a little bit of an update on where the maturity is. This is an 09 maturity soybean here, and this is an 06 maturity soybean. I'd say the 06 maturity is probably an average maturity to be raised in this Lake Park area. And you can see that the leaves are starting to turn yellow underneath, and we're starting to move into the maturity time with those soybeans, whereas the 09s are still kind of holding on a little bit and staying green. One thing to keep in mind now as we're getting to this time of the year, this is a good time of the year to really think about soybean cyst nematode and where those spots might be occurring in the field. So if you see some spots in your fields that maybe look like iron chlorosis holding on really, really late, go out and soil sample those on a 0 to 6 inch and just see if you have some soybean cyst nematode in those spots. Determining where those hot spots are can really help you decide the next steps, how to manage those fields if that's an issue.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's one of those things that is kind of this, I would almost call it a silent killer. You don't realize how much yield you're giving up if you've got cyst nematode.
Yeah, you don't really realize that you're giving it up, and then all of a sudden you can't figure out why your soybeans in that field just don't yield like you remember them. And so figuring out that you've got that issue is the first step. And then of course considering crop rotation or something like that. If you have high numbers of soybean cyst nematode, that's probably a great field to consider for corn for next year.
Yeah, right, and probably several other crops in the rotation as well to stay away from for a few years anyway.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about corn.
All right, I'll put down those. We have a few different varieties of corn here. We have 85, 88, 87, 36, and 91, 93, and all three of these hybrids are actually hybrids that I've been kind of watching in my territory, and I'm actually very pleased with how these hybrids are handling the drought stress so far. You can see that we're pollinated very well on all three of these hybrids, and these plants were just picked quite fresh just a little bit ago. The 85, 88 is about at a half milk line right now. So we're moving along pretty well, and there's some pretty good yield potential. One thing to keep in mind though with corn, in these drought conditions that we've got all over, we have areas where the drought is better and areas where the drought is worse. It doesn't really matter though. You need to keep an eye on your cornfields all over the place. And keep in mind that the adverse conditions that we've had throughout the year, just watch for some stock quality issues regardless of hybrids, and make sure that you harvest your corn when it's ready to be harvested.
Yeah, instead of letting it dry way down, because we probably could this year, standability becomes an issue then.
Absolutely. And one thing along with that is sometimes when you harvest your corn at that really dry moisture, it feels really nice when you're in the combine because you don't have to deal with that extra handling or dryer cost, but there is actually a yield loss to that, to shatter and other issues. There is such a thing as harvesting corn when it's too dry, and you can actually give up bushels to that. So make sure that you harvest your corn when it's ready to be harvested.
You have any tips on that at all, Sarah? As far as harvesting, knowing when you should be harvesting that corn?
I guess my ideal moisture to harvest corn for across most hybrids, and this is a pretty broad brush stroke, would be someplace in that 17 to 20% range. So usually the shatter is a little bit better around then. If you get down to that 14%, it's pretty realistic that you're giving up quite a bit of yield at that point.
Yeah, not so bad then starting at 23, 24, getting started there and then working your way through it. Absolutely,
absolutely.
Anything else we need to be aware of?
One thing that I also want to encourage everybody to think about is weeds. We had a really early Wheat harvest, here we are. We finally have some nice rains, which, by the way, I hope you guys do more crop tours, because you're good luck for bringing on the rains. But now this rain that we've gotten on these harvested small grain fields are really going to bring about weed germination, especially weeds like water hemp that like to emerge for the entire growing season in the absence of a crop canopy. If you're planning on raising some broadleaf crops in those fields next year, it's a good time to get out and do fall burn downs and try to keep those weeds in check. You'll have a much easier time with weed control next year.
Sure. Also need to be aware of soil moisture and maintaining soil moisture, I think, too, as far as fall tillage and those types of things.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. I've seen in some places where some farmers are trying to get out and get their tillage done. I just want to encourage guys to be cognizant of the fact that in some places in my territory, the Red River Valley, where we are traditionally known for our mud, we are in exceptional drought. And so making sure that we're maintaining that soil moisture for next year is important. The number one way to conserve on that moisture is to reduce tillage. I'd just like you to remember that you can always add tillage. But once that tillage pass is done, it's really hard to take it back. So be very judicious in when you're making your tillage decisions this fall.
All right. Field agronomist Sarah Lovas with Pioneer. I'm Randy Conan. You're on the Pioneer Agronomy Update.